All right. Vergi iadesi mi? Let's get started. Remember what we were doing. Whenever you're ready, we'll get started. Excellent. So we were doing this fascinating job of building a model, right? Now we're doing this the slightly awkward way, which is we're building the model first, asking the questions later, okay? Normally, your mind should work the following way. I have this question, right? I want to know why X, Y, Z happens, or what happens if I do this and that as economic policy, okay? Then you're going to say, wait, that's not an easy question, okay? I can't think of all aspects of this, so let's limit this question a little bit. Let's try to give this the simplest possible answer, right? That's what the model is. You write down a simple world and ask, what happens if I do this in this simple world, okay? For example, one question that we will get to answer today is, what happens to the gross domestic product if government spending increases by 1 lira, okay? This is an important question because in 1999, well, in 2009, about a decade later, that will be last year, okay? The government said, look, we're running a budget deficit. That is, we're spending more than we are getting in terms of taxes, right? But this is a good thing because we're supporting the production, we're supporting the economy in a time of a crisis, okay? Does this make sense? You should have a feeling that it kind of, yeah, you know, it doesn't sound very stupid, but what exactly sense is there? Okay? In particular, if the government increased its spending, say, by 1 billion liras, do we expect to see GDP increase by 1 billion liras? More than that? Less than that? Those are good questions, okay? And that's what the model is good for, right? It helps you think. So we'll get to answer this question. So the first thing we have to understand, though, is in a given economy, where will GDP be? That is, how much production will take place, okay? So that was the question we began with. We said, well, we have to have some sense of how much people will want to spend, right? Aggregate expenditure. And then we should be able to say, given that people's spending will be this much, production should match that, so that will be an equilibrium, okay? Saying this sentence took the entirety of 2 hours on Monday, right? So the model we had was we said, we're going to write aggregate expenditure, and that's going to be consumption plus investment plus government spending plus net exports. And then we said, let's write the simplest model, right? Let's have net exports equal to 0, right? Closed economy, no trade, no imports, no exports, whatever, okay? Let's also have investment constant at some level, I bar, okay? So people will want to do this much investment. Desired investment is I bar, regardless of what GDP is, okay? Does this make sense? Not to me, right? I mean, this says, regardless of whether the economy is doing great, or it sucks, or you know, whether your GDP is 0-ish, it won't be 0 with this, but you know, even when your GDP is very low, very high, you always want to do the same, you know, 200 million liras of investment. Not very smart, okay? Not only not very smart, we know that this is not correct. We know that investment moves with the business cycle. How do we know this? Well, you did your homework, you looked at the numbers, okay? You know that investment moves with the business cycle. In fact, it moves a lot with the business cycle. However, this is exactly what a model is. I don't have to think of every quirk in the economy. I don't have to think of, you know, realistically capturing everything. I just want to get the broad things correct, okay? So let's have investment constant. Makes my life easy, okay? Let's have government spending constant. Makes my life easy, right? If I have everything constant, this won't be very interesting. right? So I should rather have something moving around so that I could ask the good questions. That would be consumption, right? We said consumption is A plus B disposable income, and we have taxes constant. And you're going to remember that we defined disposable income as income, that would be GDP, minus taxes. Okay? So let's set this up. It'll sit there as a reminder of which model we're working with. Right? Good. Now these constant bits, say A in consumption, okay? Those are called autonomous. This is a weird word. Well, not weird, but not a very straightforward word. Autonomous spending. Autonomous means it doesn't depend on income, okay? Externally given, right? So this A, consumption equals A plus B di, okay? A, it says you do that A, consumption, regardless of what your income is. It doesn't depend on your income, okay? Autonomous spending. That's the autonomous component of consumption. This is a useful concept because, remember, we said, well, let's write aggregate expenditure as aggregate expenditure equals, I can add these up, right? A plus B y minus T bar plus I bar plus G bar. That would be A minus BT bar plus I bar plus G bar. Do me a favor. Don't memorize this, okay? Understand how this is done, but you know, it's going to be turned out to be this bunch of stuff in this model only, right? I assumed this is constant, this is constant, this is constant. So I'm going to lump these into constants. I'm going to give you a homework where none of these are constant, okay? And so if you understand what the thinking is, this is easy, right? We're just saying, I'm adding up spending components. I'm adding up expenditure, right? It doesn't depend on how I assumed expenditure works, okay? Plus BY. So I said, I'm going to call this bit, the bunch of constants, A bar, autonomous spending, okay? So aggregate expenditure equals A bar plus BY in this simplest of all models, right? It's going to be something else depending on how I model things. For example, now, let's get to the example later. Good. So we had this. Then we said, I can plot this. Let me have expenditure here and income here, right? This is what that line looks like, okay? The slope is less than 1. How do I know that? Well, because I know that B is less than 1. B, the marginal propensity of consumption, how much of the additional 1 lira of income that you can spend do you actually spend, right? That's B. How do I know this? Well, that's up here, right? 1 more lira of disposable income turns into B units, B liras of consumption. Okay? Then we said, look, this Y is income, okay? It's also the GDP because GDP is income, and we spent a lot of time convincing ourselves that that is indeed the case. Then we said, I should be able to think of an equilibrium concept for this model, okay? In fact, the equilibrium concept isn't model specific, right? Equilibrium idea is always that can I find an allocation or a behavioral rule such that given what other people are doing, I don't have an incentive to change my behavior. Given what I am doing, others don't have an incentive to change their behavior. And this is the definition of equilibrium, okay? So for the economist, when we say equilibrium, you know, you have more physics than economics in mind, right? Denge. Something stays in equilibrium, Okay? The economist's equilibrium isn't quite the physicist's equilibrium. Why not? We're not thinking of this mechanistic idea. Okay? We're thinking of human behavior. So we're saying, right, the physicist's equilibrium isn't a question about does this side of this want to move, does this side of this want to move, right? The economist's idea is exactly that. Given what the guy at this side is doing, will this guy take an action such that this is an equilibrium? Given what this guy is doing, will this guy take an action such that this is an equilibrium? Okay? So, could this be an equilibrium? Sure. For the economist, it could. Perhaps our idea is that this guy is going to lean back and this guy is going to lean forward, okay? So that you're going to end up like this, okay? Is this guy happy with what he's doing? Yeah. Is this guy happy with what he's doing? Sure. This is an equilibrium, okay? Always think of the, well, don't always think of that example, but a good example to remind you of the equilibrium concept for the economist is the Soviet Union, US example, okay? They both have nuclear weapons, neither use the nuclear weapons. Why? Because if one uses the nuclear weapons, the other one will also do that. Do you want this to happen? Do you want yourself to be nuked? No. Are you going to send your nuclear weapons to the other country? If you don't send your nuclear weapons to the other country, will they send theirs to you? No. Is this an equilibrium? Good. Okay? This is not a mechanistic behavior. This is not demand equals supply, right? But this is the idea of the equilibrium. So here the idea of the equilibrium is the following. We have producers, okay? And we assumed in this model that producers are happy to produce as much as people want to use, okay? Because remember, we said we're going to do this in 3 steps, right? No prices. This is this model. See? No prices. Okay? Then we said, mumble, not quite. Not wrong, but we said, so this is always about supply, okay? Here I'm modeling components of expenditure, right? This has to lead to some demand, okay? The question is, well, what is supply, right? And we're saying, oh, don't worry about it. The producers are happy to produce as much as you are willing to use, as much as you're willing to buy, okay? So we said, let's do this first and then go back to there, okay? We said, if we're at a point like this, here, where we're producing nothing, but we're spending some, okay? Are we at an equilibrium? That is, are the producers happy to produce nothing, and the people who do the expenditure, the consumers, government, investors, okay? Are they happy to be at this point? Who is happy, who isn't? Are the people who do the spending happy? Yes, right? Because given output, given their income, this is how much they want to spend, right? They're not complaining. I'm sure they're not happy to have 0 income, right? But given that they have 0 income, this is how much they want to spend, okay? We don't have a problem with that. But let's ask the producer's question. Given there's this much spending, is this how much they want to produce? Given that you're selling something, but you're not producing anything, your production is 0, okay? Do you feel that you're at an equilibrium? Do you feel that you can keep on doing this forever? This should be easy, right? So this is the producer's question. These guys are asking themselves, wait. I'm not producing anything. I'm selling my goods, okay? Where are these goods coming from? My previous production, my stocks, my inventories. I'm selling my inventories, okay? Now, here we have inventories. And in the GDP calculation, where I have y equals c plus I plus g plus net exports, I have investment again, right? And the kicker here is that this investment is actual investment. That investment in aggregate expenditure is desired investment, okay? What is the difference? The difference is unplanned, undesired inventory changes, okay? Here, for example, You're selling your inventories. You're selling your stocks. Did you want to do this? No. Okay? So here, is actual investment higher or lower than planned investment, desired investment? It's going to be lower. Why? Because investment is physical investment, that is buying more machines, building one more factory kind of investment, plus changes in inventories, okay? For the expenditure bit, you were saying, I don't want to change my inventories. Let's assume that, okay? I just want to keep constant inventories, okay? Are you keeping constant inventories here? No, your inventories are decreasing. If your inventories are decreasing, what is happening to investment? Investment is falling, right? Because we're measuring this here. So actual investment is less than desired investment, okay? Are you at an equilibrium? Right? So this is one of the most important things you're going to learn, okay? Because this is going to be the driver of equilibrium behavior throughout the discussion that we're going to have this semester, right? So we're always going to think of, you know, are the producers happy to produce this much and sell this much, okay? These guys are producing nothing and selling a lot. Are they happy? No, okay? Good. So are they going to keep on producing nothing? If this is an equilibrium behavior, they're not going to stay there, okay? I'm not going to ask you whether they're going to increase or decrease production because A, you should know this already, and B, they can't decrease it any further because they're at 0, right? So production is going to increase. And then we said we could make the argument from the other side as well. Let's assume that they produce zillions of units here, but selling only half of it, okay? So this time expenditure is less than income. What would happen then? The rest goes to inventories, right? The inventories are building up. You're producing, you're not selling. Well, what is happening to this production? You're just putting into your stocks, okay? You're putting this in your inventories. This time inventories are running up, right? You know, you produce all the meatballs, okay? And you freeze them, and you keep them. Okay. Well, they keep for a long time, but are you happy doing this forever? Very good. If only you could speak English. Right? So you're going to say, wait. I mean, here is my freezer, right? It takes tons of meatballs. But if I keep on putting more and more here every year, I'm going to run out of space eventually. And it isn't very smart to keep on producing these meatballs, given that nobody seems to be interested in buying these. Okay? Are you going to keep on producing this much? No. Okay? So you're going to decrease production. So this tells you that, look, there's a place where you produce too little. There's somewhere where you produce too much. Okay? Is there a point where you produce just right? Yes. Okay? There should be the switch between too little and too much. How do I find this? This is my good old 45-degree line, which isn't quite straight the way I draw it, but it should be. Okay? So let me say there you go. Right. So I'm saying, look, there's a point on the 45-degree line. On the 45-degree line, income equals expenditure. Okay? When I'm also on my expenditure locus line, right? Income equals desired expenditure, which is what I wanted, right? Cool. So this is equilibrium. So this is where we stopped on Monday. Okay, so that was a very quick review. Now we can talk about the following. We said what we're doing is, so this is your GDP, right? This is my aggregate expenditure. Aggregate expenditure equals A bar plus BY, okay? I said, and you believed me, as you should, although I have one equation here that relates expenditure to income, I also have something else that I could use. I have my equilibrium notion, right? My equilibrium definition says you cannot be in equilibrium until your expenditure, your spending, is equal to your production. right? So this is one more bit of information that I could use to pin down where I should be, okay? So that says aggregate expenditure should be equal to production. Ha! That's the 45-degree line, right? So here is something that you should be able to do throughout the class. For everything that we do, you should be able to understand and show this in 3 ways, okay? One is drawing a graph. The other one is writing an equation. And the third one is just saying it, okay? Just saying it is the most important bit. It's always possible to just crank through the math, not understand that this is economics, okay? If you're able to do the equations, the graphs are simple because, well, this is the graph of the equation, okay? You can always do these two together, right? But they always give you some insight. So we began with the talking bit, right? We said, well, let's think of the expenditure components, okay? There should be investment, there should be component, okay? Then we said, look, I could write this as a model, I could write these in equations, okay? It will give me this. Then I said, well, I could plot this, I could draw the graph. On the graph, I could think of, once again verbally, would this be an equilibrium point? Would that be an equilibrium point? That gave me the equilibrium notion, the equilibrium definition, the equilibrium understanding, okay? Now I'm going back to my equations. Why? I like them, okay? So here I said, on the graph, I showed this is the equilibrium point. In words, we're able to say, yep, you're going to be in equilibrium when your production, that is your income, is equal to your aggregate expenditure, okay? I could also solve for this, which comes very handy, right? I can do this. At equilibrium, both of these are going to be satisfied, okay? Notice that only at equilibrium, both of these are going to be satisfied, right? Only at this point, both of those are holding. So I could say, I'm going to substitute in. Equilibrium is A plus B. What is the use of this? Well, this is one equation in one unknown, and I do know how to solve this one. And I hope you do too. This one gives me A bar. Okay, so from here, let's write YE is 1 over 1 minus B A bar. Were you able to follow this advanced math? There is a reason why the university hires me to teach you guys. I can do these. Now, let's put the parentheses here too. If you memorize this, fail this class, you will. Okay? Learn how to get to this. But 1 over 1 minus b is never the answer to any question, okay? It is going to be the answer to a bunch of questions in this particular model. But in general, you're only going to mislead yourself if you just think that we're going to think of a bunch of concepts where this 1 over 1 minus b will play a critical role, okay? But you have to always ask yourself, what the hell is 1 over 1 minus b, okay? Answer is, it's nothing. It's just a construct that I put in because I model things this way. I could have written a slightly different model. Then, rather than having 1 over 1 minus b here, I would have a bunch of other junk, okay? But this 1 over 1 minus b in this model is extremely useful. Now I can ask the following question. Where is government spending here? It's in A bar, okay? So now I could ask, what happens to equilibrium GDP? What happens to equilibrium production if government spending increases by 1? Does equilibrium GDP increase by 1? Good. You could actually tell me how much it increases by looking here. 1 over 1 minus b. So that's that magical 1 over 1 minus b. Okay? Here's a question. Let's think of this 1 over 1 minus b item. Is this guy 1? If it's 1, right, then the answer is still 1. Is 1 over 1 minus b 1? Well, we could actually know exactly when 1 over 1 minus b will be 1. When is it 1? When b is 0. Is b 0? No. How do we know this? Yep, right. We're smart people. we wrote down our assumptions at the beginning and we said B is greater than 0. Okay? Well, is this number less than 1 or greater than 1? Somebody was mumbling 1 minus B is between 0 and 1. If B is between 0 and 1, what about 1 minus B? Is that between 0 and 1? Yes. Very good. If you divide 1 by some number that's between 0 and 1, that is less than 1, is the resulting thing less than or greater than 1? Very good. I'm most impressed. So this guy, 1 over 1 minus B, is something greater than 1. So the equations tell us that when government spending goes up by 1 unit, equilibrium GDP increases by 1, less than 1, or more than 1? More than 1. This is the fun part of being an economist, right? And today I hereby decree you as economists because you've done the good example of I've written the model, I've asked a question, I got an answer, I didn't understand the answer. Right? Do you understand why you're getting this? You understand the mathematics. Do you understand the economics of why you're getting this? Okay? So we're sure that the math is correct, right? We didn't screw up the simple algebra here. Okay? So the model really tells us that if you believe in what you put in here, okay, and your reasoning is correct, if government spending, that is A bar, goes up by 1, equilibrium GDP increases by more than 1. Well, we kind of liked this model. We thought this is something reasonable. So that model prediction should also be kind of correct, but why? What on earth would lead 1 unit of more government spending to turn into more than 1 unit of GDP? Because here, in our GDP definition, it clearly says when government spending increases by 1, right, GDP will increase by 1. So what the hell is going on? Sweet question, isn't it? This is a beautiful question because this is essentially what justifies all of the government interventions. Okay? There was a huge fight in the US in 2008, 2009 on just how large this 1 over 1 minus B is. There are a bunch of people who want to say the government should increase spending to stimulate the economy. Okay? Ekonomiyi canlandırmak, stimulate the economy. Those guys are saying when the government spending increases, this is going to work because 1 over 1 minus B is some large, large number. Okay? There are a bunch of other people who say the government shouldn't do this because it's not going to work. It's not going to work because, well, 1 over 1 minus B is this tiny, tiny number. Where do we stand? Well, first we have to understand what is this 1 over 1 minus B business, okay? What are we looking at? Let's try this. Let's try to see, let's first do the following. Can we see the same effect in the graph? Can we see that if the government spending increases by 1, it looks like equilibrium GDP will increase by more than 1? Should we be able to see this in the graph as well? Yes, right? I mean, if it's correct in the equation, it better be correct here too. Okay? So let's try. What happens when government spending increases by 1? Yep. So what happens in the graph? The 45-degree line shifts? Okay? So this thing shifts up by 1. Right? So let's think of this. And in theory, these are parallel. Okay? And this distance is 1. Right? This distance is 1. Let's see what happened to equilibrium GDP. If this is 1, is this also 1? Is it less than 1 or more than 1? Very good. This increased by 1. This clearly increased by more than 1. Okay? I see that in the graph as well. But I still don't understand it. Right? Something is going on here. I see in my graph that when government spending or any autonomous spending, any component of a bar increases by 1, right? Equilibrium GDP will increase by more than 1. Lovely. I also see that here, and I'm befuddled as to why that would be the case. What do we think is going on? Let's take a 5-minute break and be back here to talk about this lovely, beautiful topic.